ancient version of civilization, everything came from God. In other words, everything came from divine sources. But just like one scientist passing through information to another scientist, divinity also has a way to descend the information. So when we're looking at the Vedas, we understand that wisdom has come from wisdom, the knowledge has come from knowledge. So the men of wisdom were called rishis or yogis. We can compare them with modern intellectual or scientists, just like Einstein and other great scientists that we know. Although scientists look like common people, but they don't have a common way of thinking about things. So if you really give something to intellectual, he'll start processing this from different points. Therefore, divine wisdom, although it's perfect wisdom, has to be descend through the perfect beings who will be able to do two things. Number one, to analyze this divine wisdom and accept it. And number two, to be able to transmit this divine wisdom to other people that may not be on the same intellectual level. That is called education. So when we deal with education, we can understand that education has many, many levels. So when you're entering school, you're not meeting some teacher who start give you the higher knowledge of the higher grace. No, he'll start giving you ABC. And you can complain, say like, why do you show me ABC? Like, I want to have the knowledge, the base knowledge. But the teacher will very clearly explain to you. He will say, well, if you really want to understand about ABC and higher knowledge, you have to understand how to link primarily knowledge to the higher knowledge. So that is education, step by step entering into higher knowledge as more your consciousness growing. So when we talk about spiritual history of religion, we'll see that's normally, it's been part of spirituality. So you start from your basic ideas. However, a lot of spiritual ideas are still remain on the very basic level because it been dealt with very basic audience. Just like when you're always dealing with primarily school children and your prime school children teacher, you kind of giving them knowledge, but it's not the highest and most amazing knowledge and most superior knowledge. So when we're talking about Vedas, there's so many levels of higher and higher and higher knowledge, which are contained in Vedas. Therefore, Vedas are, how to say, you cannot compare Vedas to any other scriptures in the world. First of all, in depth. Second of all, in size. So think of this. In only Puranic literature, one of the Purana has, let's say Bhagavad Purana, has around 18,000 verses, 18,000 philosophical concepts. When we start, we're looking like, let's say 12 Puranas, we're looking for something over 300,000 philosophical verses. And when we start looking at quality and depth of this Vedic knowledge, you can understand some of the formulas are unable to be understood by common people because it requires such a deep intellectual and spiritual experience to be able to understand. So when we're looking for Vedic knowledge, we can say, well, it's the amazing knowledge because it has so much information that common man can't even read it or can't even process it. So then the natural answer in your mind will be, well, then it's impossible for common people to learn in the common age. Not everybody can become, a physicist or a great scientist. But there is a different approach. First of all, the Vedic knowledge is not about being intellectual only. Intellect is one of the instruments. So Vedic knowledge is about realization through meditation. In Sanskrit called amnaya prahatatvam, means revelation. So if you really look at the story of Jesus or Moses or any prophet, then you understand. He went to some secluded place, he had fasting, praying, meditation, and God started speaking to him. So that's a very general way that revelation is explained in Vedas. But basically, we have to accept that principle. It doesn't really matter how much information we have. It's all about how we can process this information. In other words, how does we not just to read the book or not to know the knowledge. How does that knowledge really affect our consciousness? How does it affect our heart? Therefore, when we're talking about study Vedas, we're talking about different stages like yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyaharana, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. In other words, first you have to be moral. You can't be, a saintly person if you're immoral. But then you have to learn about your own physiology. Then you have to own about your mental system. Then you have to describe your spiritual identity. Then you have to learn how to withdraw from your physical self to your spiritual self and accept knowledge based on your spiritual identity. So that is the yogic process of knowledge. I give you a very simple example. Let's say I'm a Russian. So if you ask common Russian, who's Jesus Christ? He'll tell you, he's a Russian God. Well, I'm sorry, dude, he came from Israel, number one. Second of all, he's considered himself son of God. Number two. Number three, there's so many details about him that you don't even know, but you are directly identifying yourself with a particular person. So God cannot be Russian, he cannot be Jewish, he cannot be Indian, he cannot be Chinese. God is a God. He's an omnipotent being that has unique position in the world. Everything came from him. So the Jews came from him, the Russians came from him, the Israelis came from him, the Africans came, everybody came from God. But normal questions are, how do you understand that? Very simple. You have to understand, God is source of everything. So when we talk about Vedic perception of who God is, he's not just a person, he also has impersonal energy. He also has external energy, internal energy. Like for instance, everything came from God. So natural mistake that people have, they say, well, this world is a world of evil, so the evil also came from God. Obviously, the potential of evil came from God too. What is the potential of evil? Like for instance, you're walking on the street and you're seeing money. You're seeing somebody's pocket, wallet, let's say coins or cash. So you have free will. So number one, you pick up the money and you're raising the hand and ask, has anybody lost money? Then you're realizing your potential of being a good person. But if you see, hey, look, God sent me a lot of money. Somebody just lost them. You put it in your pocket. Maybe that was women that need to buy food for their children. So I will tell you one interesting story. Recently, I was reading news. And I was reading news about Everest. You know Everest mountain. Do you know Everest? If everybody knows Everest, they should raise their hand. So, thank you. So when I was reading news about Everest, I was very impressed with one Israeli Everest climber. You know what he did? Everybody would go to Everest, and the rule is this: if somebody broken his leg or somebody dying on Everest, you should not help him. So there were one person who were almost dying on Everest, and everybody knew this rule: do not help anybody on Everest, pass by him and let him die. And there are many dead bodies on the way to Everest. So what happened is this Israeli guy, he was passing by somebody dying on Everest, and he said, I should try to help this person. But everybody told, no. The rules are not to help anybody. You have to get to the Everest and you have to come back. Otherwise you die too. But this Israeli guy, he said, well, maybe it's my destiny to die, but at least on my life, I'll try to help someone. So instead of going to the Everest, he decided to stop, separate himself from the group, pick that person, and that person was barely alive, and start climbing down from the Everest. So he finally saved that person. So my question to you, is this guy did something wrong? Then my question is like, everybody had this rule not to help anyone while you're climbing Everest. So this guy broke all the law, all the rules, all the common sense, and he saved somebody's life. So I want to tell you, he may not came to the top part of Everest, but my question is, he's a true climber or not? What do you think? So I want your opinion. What do you think?
המיקרופון просто очень תיכו работает. אם מישהו רוצה להגיד משהו, צריך לקחת את המיקרופון. אחרת זה לא...
I want you to tell me what you think about this guy.
I think he's a true climber, of course, the best
Right.
of them.
Yes. Okay.
I think he is not a true climber. I think he is a true person. The true climber would continue. I climbed a lot, so I know.
So next.
I think he did climb a mountain, but it wasn't Everest. It was what he did. That's my opinion.
This time he saved life, but he will have another opportunity to climb the Everest, so he's a real climber.
We have one more guest. Somebody else want to say something? Okay, so here's my conclusion to this. He actually climbed his ego. He came to his level of soul and his true spiritual identity. Because the true spiritual identity is to feel somebody else's pain as your own pain. And most people climb for their ego. They get the money, they climb the Everest, they make a picture, and then in their ego book, which called Facebook, they'll put the post, look, I'm a climber. And at best, they will make picture how many dead bodies on the way, so that how many difficulties we overcome to get to that level. So to me, he's the only real person who climbed Everest. Everybody else mainly came for the self-exploration of ego. And this guy came for his, true revelation of what his true identity is. So as you can imagine, climbing spiritual grade, to me, it's like Everest. Most people want to be spiritual because of their ego. So no matter how they perceive what the truth is, but the real meaning of spiritual life is divine love. That's why in Vedas is described as a Krishna prem. It's the love which can be achieved only on the level of the pure soul. But before you come to this level, you have to overcome many layers of false self-identity. Therefore, Vedas are explaining to you, you're not physical being, you're not the body. If you think you are Russian, Israeli, women or men, you have a big problem, because this is your temporary position. It's positioned for only one physical life, and really you are spiritual soul. So therefore, in order to understand Vedas, you do need to have a proper mindset that's called Buddhi Yoga. So if you are really heard name Buddha, then do you know what word Buddha means in Sanskrit? What do you think? What does it mean?
Awaken.
Yes, well, actually, it's partial meaning of that, because it's a so-called sub-name, but really name Buddhi in Sanskrit mean pure light, pure mind, like clear mind. Buddhi, because Buddhi also means intelligence or intelligent, but not like material intelligence. Okay, I surf internet, I know where to buy cheap. That's not like the intelligence the Vedas are talking. So Vedas are speaking about Buddhi as an enlightened spiritual mind. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna say, Durena Hyavaram Karma, Buddhi Yogan Janan Jaya. So which means you only can understand karma or people activity if you have mind of Buddhi, of the pure mind. Without having a pure mind, you cannot understand God, you cannot understand self, you cannot. That's why yogis, they would perform spiritual practice in order to purify their mind and achieve proper stage of mind to be able to perceive what the truth is. So rest of it is ignorance, goodness, and passion. So the Vedas are say most religion the world exists in ignorance, passion, and little goodness. So when we really start examining materialistic religions, we can understand that most of them were designed to control people. They're not really spiritual. They look spiritual, but mainly they're politically built for society control or like establish certain rules in society. So most of the religions have very, very small intention to make you spiritual. And the reason they have very small intention to make you spiritual, because once you become spiritual, you're gonna leave this religion. You understand? Like once you become highly educated, you don't need primary school. You have to leave your primary school because you're gonna say, I'm not really interesting. So lately I was looking for one video, interesting video. It says why Giordano Bruno were burned. So once I was with my friends in Rome, and Rome is a beautiful city, and Rome has many, many historical places like Colosseum and so many other places. So we were talking about walking on evening time in Rome, having a little coffee, and I said, "What's this name of this beautiful square?" And my friend said, "Oh, this is called Giordano Bruno Square." I said, "It's so beautiful." And he said, "Yes, they burned Giordano Bruno right over here." I said, "Oh my God, they did it." But I thought, like, beautiful square, so many tourists from all over the world, beautiful cafes, we're sitting drinking coffee, and on the middle of the square, they burned Giordano Bruno. So then I thought, well, I need to understand why they really burned him. So I started, little research, and really, you know what they burned him? They burned him because he believed in immortality of the soul. He also believed that universe is multi-identical, that universe has many, many galaxies, many planets, many civilizations. So it sounds like very common sense. But my question is, why did they really burn him? He wasn't like a dangerous guy, right? He wasn't like a dangerous person, but they decide to burn him for one specific reason. His understanding of reality was beyond common perception. And he was talking when they were trying to prosecute him. They said, "Oh, how can God create so many worlds? We should understand God created only our world." The Bruno said, "Well, God is so powerful, he can create millions of worlds." And it sounds to me like Bruno speaking much more reasonable with the people that tried to prosecute him. But they said, well, that's not what it says in the Bible. But the Bruno said, actually, this is my perception by reading the Bible. See, as you understand, Bruno was not talking against a Christianity or religion. He had deep, expanded mind. So then Bruno said to them, well, I also studied the Greek philosophy and astronomy, and those science make sense to me. Like, the science of astronomy tells me there are many suns and many moons and many galaxies, and it's also been written by other Greek philosophers and even Christian scientists. But see, the Orthodox Church decided, no, this guy is too difficult to deal with. We got to burn him. He's just, if we keep this guy alive, we got a problem, because we got our social system, we got our religious system, we got everything working. So if we're going to get a guy who's challenging what we believe in, he's challenging our authority, then we have a problem. We got to burn him. So as you can understand, people in this world are not really care about the truth. Most people in this world, they think, how do I look at my position? How do I look at my government? How do I look at my scientific PhD? Because if there's somebody else coming and bringing my, challenging my PhD, then I look like a fool. So, as you know, there are proper new scientists called, genetics. And especially one of the Russian genetic scientists, he did the whole study about tribes of Israel. And very interesting information, because you see, many people want to claim themselves, but when you start do genetic studies, it starts making sense. So I will tell a little later about that. But this genetic scientist, he said, well, you know, maybe 50 years ago or 30 years ago, we could have some doubts about Darwinian evolution. But today, because we have all the genetic science, which clearly explain that Darwin was not right, his idea of evolution is not correct, we have a complete proof. But the problem is, most of the bureaucracy people does not interesting to rewrite the books of science, number one. And number two, like, they don't have any better explanation. Like, technically, you know, Darwin was not correct, but at the moment, we don't have any better explanation, because if we start taking Quran or Bible or Indian Vedas, you know, we won't be able to look good. So we need better explanation of the theory before we break in one. And the interesting things, the reason we're using this Darwin theory, it's not because it's truth, it's just because it's comfortably accepted by most atheists that have in the world. Can you imagine that? So technically, guys, we live in a world of bullshit, where the bullshit is, hey, we know it's bullshit, but you know, it's kind of a good bullshit, and we kind of accept it. So, and of course, you all know about Germany and Nazis, and maybe some of your grandfathers and grandmothers have been suffering from Nazis, but the leading Nazis ideologist, Goebbels, he used to say, when they told him, how come you're with your bullshit convince all the Germans? And he said, very easy. We just tell bullshit, we'll tell lie until people believe it's truth. So we start telling them lie from their school, and then we'll tell them lie in primarily education, and then we'll lie them, you know, in their university, and then finally they accept, you know, the lie, because, you know, there's nothing else. So here's why the Vedas and ancient yogic texts, they are different. They tell you have to become a yogi, you have to become a spiritual experimentation to really understand that everything says in this philosophy is truth. Do you understand what it means? So if you just read the book, it has no meaning. It may lead you towards perfection. Just like, you know, you've read the business book and you've learned something about business, but it doesn't really mean you become a rich man. So everybody will tell you, you know what? You don't have to read all the business book, but you know what? If you want to learn about business, you have to start doing it. So when we talk about spiritual realization, and here I will end on important things so that you can ask your questions or give your comments, is like, when we talk about spiritual realization, what we really, really believe in a yogic path and spiritual path, you have to have your own experience. And this experience is not cheap. I'm sure a lot of you took LSD and psychedelics. And a great part of that psychedelic drugs that, you know, you took immediately, you get some water and you're in another dimension, another reality in half an hour. And you're out there for like, you know, a few hours, and then you're back to the earth and you say, wow, I experienced something different. But as you understand, psychedelics cannot give you full spiritual experience. However, the good part of psychedelics, that they will change your perception, because you immediately start feeling some other reality exists. Whether it's illusionary with drugs or not, but that is immediate proof of that something is there. So when you talk about yogic spiritual experience, it's not like psychedelics. It's not gonna take you for 2 hours and get you back. It's actually a different way. The yogic experience will take you immediately to a new level of consciousness, and not only make you remain on that level of consciousness, it will show you the next level of consciousness. Do you understand what I mean? Because I do Burning Man, I do a lot of different festivals in America, and I have many friends in art and music, you know, like the leading guys in the world. And they all into like psychedelics because they believe like, okay, if I take acid, I can do better music or better art. But what I'm explaining to them, hey guys, there's a pure stage of consciousness by experiencing which you will experience reality total beautiful way. And in order to get to that level of consciousness, you have to work your ass off. It's not about, you know, drinking pill and what, it's about working every day towards self-realization. Like, you know, I wake up in the morning, I try to do my pranayama, my pray, my meditation, my study, and I do it every day. And it's like, okay, how far did you go? I can say, well, maybe did not go that far as I want. But you know what? I feel different. So what I'm trying to inspiring you for is not just you have to believe in me or some other guys, is that as you're joining the divine path of spiritual practice, then you'll feel yourself and then you see how far you can go. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, or any comments. I know you're very intellectual, you're very smart people. You probably read a lot, so if you have any things that we want to discuss, spiritual ideas, I'll be happy. It could be thesis or questions.
Она спрашивает, какую идею, как бы реально, какую идею вы хотите до нас донести?
Okay. I give you the general idea on the Vedic knowledge, and you are correct. What is that exactly you're trying to sell to me? Because on the end, the sale means acceptance of one item. If you come to supermarket, you may say, well, you have a wonderful store, but what is that exactly I need, and why that I need to buy this? The reason I'm speaking to you with commerce language, because it's very, very clear. See, in philosophy, there's so much bullshit in water. But when it comes to sale, you have to really like what you buy. Here's what I'm trying to give you. Number one, as a soul, you're eternal and immortal. That's a great idea, because if you look at the modern world, everybody afraid one thing is to die. The rich guy is afraid, the poor guy is afraid. Soul is immortal according to its spiritual definition. It says, but Newton's law, soul, energy never appear, never disappear. In other words, as a soul, as an energy, you already exist and you will exist in the future. Let's say about water. If you drink a glass of water, it does not mean water disappear. Water will come as urine. If you steam your boil pot, the water will come as a steam. So water never dissolve, just take different forms. So think of this. As a spiritual soul, you take in physical body, and which is you temporarily shell cover, and you have to die, not as a soul, as a spiritual body, number one. Number two, why do you exist? You exist because of love. All you're looking for is love and happiness. So you're not looking for intellectual suffering. If you know, like famous Russian classics, one of the famous books says like trouble of the mind. So we know a lot of smart people, they got trouble by their own mind. So that's what I'm trying to push to you. So the Vedic knowledge is explained that the mind is the instrument to achieve love, And when you're talking about love, you're not looking for some abstract love, you're looking for ideal lover. So in a spiritual idea of Vedas, you'll find Krishna, who is your ideal lover. In other words, God can be your friend, God can be your lover, God can be a being that has unique way to interact with you. And that's where the higher knowledge of Vedas, although the God is energy, although the God is creator, although the God is destroyer, but that's not his fine definition. Just like your definition, happiness and love, God's definition, happiness and love too. And by his omnipotency, he can have relationship with so many beings because he's expand himself in many individual forms. So if God wants to be your individual friend, he has enough power to expand his avatar to be your individual friend. So that is the Vedic perception, what divine relationship with God. And I guarantee you, you will not find this in any other book in the world because it's not even described of. So that's what I'm trying to present to you. Highest idea of divine love, personal relationship with divinity, immortality in the positive spiritual existent plane, and this is the goal of human evolution. So when we're talking about Darwinian evolution, it's about survival of the fittest. So when we talk about Vedic subjective evolution, it's about achieving higher relationship with Supreme Being. That's what it is. Thank you.
יש עוד שאלות?
Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Yeah. I also thought you can listen this about without drugs and music. It's very clear. Love with God. Dance with Krishna. Just think, you love to dance, but Krishna, you can dance with God. And you say, why not? Why not? If God can produce smoke and tell something to Moses, or if God can, produce his son and send him to die, does God can come and dance, right? Or he can only do bad things. Because according materialistic perception, God is a very weird guy who's trying to scare everybody, and he's trying to scare you to death, scare you to shit, and he wants to make you do something that you don't really like. Like, you have to pray. Why? Well, you just have to do it, man, you know? So that's so horrible. So what about beauty of the God? Does God love poetry? If somebody say, well, I do love poetry, I love beautiful music, does God has a girlfriend? Or he's a different orientation? Well, I mean, because everybody talk about God as a father, my question is, does God has a mother? So according to Vedas, there's a beautiful goddess, she's part of his energy, so Radha and Krishna, and Radha from word making pleasure. So without great women, men look horrible. Without great women, men look like philosopher. Because that's all he can do, think of things. But once man connect with beautiful women, you see his different identity. That's why Krishna has a goddess, and she's eternal. And think of another idea, like in America, a lot of women want to be equal to men. And like my question was like, do you really want to have a beard or be like fat and ugly? No, that's not what the women are better than men because they can love. They're a representation of beauty. So in the Vedic idea, Krishna loved Radha. She's more dear to him. Do you understand what I mean? Like Radha, the female energy, she has more beauty, she charmed Krishna. Can you figure out that such a beautiful divine spiritual idea exists that female God love his male energy, and there might be some children coming up, including you and me, right? We came from love of our parents, so why can't we come from love of God? And it's not some kind of an abstract love. That's according evolutionary principle, explosion, but not explosion of matter. When our father and mother unite, there were explosion of ecstasy. So we are children of ecstasy. People have pleasure when they produce children. It's very pleasurable. So it's so pleasurable that most people think, I don't have to produce pleasure to children to do that. Do you understand? But really, that's for procreation. So if procreation is bringing ecstasy and pleasure, think of divine idea. Isn't that interesting? Otherwise, producing children would be would be the most horrible, right? But it's not. But what we say, it's much more difficult to raise children than produce them.
So I have one question. Do you have any opinion about the law of attraction?
Law of?
Attraction. Did you hear about it?
No, if you can give me a nutshell, I can quickly grasp it. I'm a quick learner.
It's like what you think is what you become.
Okay, got you. All right, everything came out of consciousness. And obviously, if you think about vodka, you're not becoming vodka, you become an alcoholic. If you think about sex all the time, which most people do, you're not become sex, or you become sex-driven being. In other words, your own personal self-pleasure become your motivation. And that's why Freud and Jung, the German philosophers of the past years, they were talking about, you know, animal-like driven sexual principle of existence. And somebody like Darwin will explain to you that is the principle of evolution. But my question is, why then in Israel so many great heroes that give their life for the Israel? According to Darwin theory, they should be just dying for themselves and fighting for themselves. But why is that in Israel you'll see so many great people that give life to somebody else? Why is that guy who claimed Everest risk his life? According to Darwin evolution, he was supposed to be keep climbing, right? So that means really you meant to become a hero. So you're right. If you think about how to become a hero, you get the quality of the hero. If you meditate on Krishna, you get quality of the Krishna. That's why in every religion tradition, people say, oh, don't try to think about sex as much as you try to think about God. Try to switch your level of consciousness to the higher level. So now you'll say why people think about fear, sex, food, because it's instinct, like animal. Actually, we're not controlling ourselves. We're run by instinct. But the great heroes who's giving their life for the higher cause are not dying because of instinct. They're dying because the clear, I mean, and if you really look at the history of great people that dying, they're dying for freedom, they're dying for the truth, and they're consciously dying. Just like Giordano Bruno, who was burned. They told him, they said, okay, you're a priest, you're in a church. We understand you're a smart guy. All you have to do is a sign down paper that you considering all your ideas about multi-universe, divinity is false, and we'll let you go. Not only let you go, you'll continue your work. What does Giordano Bruno said? He said, I cannot deny my true nature of knowledge and wisdom. And I believe, even if I have to die for it, I'm choosing this. So why is that? Because we're not animals. We do have animal part in us, but by nature, we're saints. That is the truth. Everybody is, you know, everybody's here is son of God. And everybody can be great as Jesus or even greater. Because Jesus, we're talking some new reforming ideas like you 2,000 years ago. It was too advanced for that time. But, you know, technically, every one of sitting here, he's like son of God. So every Israeli should be like Jesus, going to the world and giving some, you know, advanced spiritual ideas to the world. That was the tribe of Israel chosen for, right? So if you call yourself, I'm chosen by God, you're not chosen by God to do business or to do like selfish thing. You're chosen by God to do something godly, divine, something spiritual. And you're not chosen by God to do only good for Israelis. You have to do something for all the good. So that's why you see many Israeli people, they're very humanitarians. They're not just limit themselves to Israel. They think if I do good, I do to everybody. You know, this guy who saved the person on Everest, he didn't ask, by the way, are you Jewish? Like, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Oh, wait. I remember now. The grandmother of my grandmother was Jewish. Okay, I'm coming to help you. That was not the thing. Right? So the guy who helped the Israeli guy, everybody told him, don't help, you'll die. He said, okay, if I die, at least I'm climbing Everest by saving somebody's life. So you know what I do? I would make this guy a monument on one of the Everest camp. The Israeli guy who's carrying somebody else back, and he's the only one. So out of all these people who God bless their souls, they're trying to do something great for their ego. He was the only guy who really showed his nature of being compassionate, to risk his life for benefit of others. All right, so when you meditate on Krishna, you meditate on spiritual things, you get quality of that. If you meditate on something material, yes, you'll achieve something material. But remember, if you think of money, what would be the thing? Did money come to you? No, money will not come to you. If you think of money, the next thing you should do is make a business plan, how to get them. So same is about Krishna. So when you think about Krishna, next thing you should think, okay, now I understand Krishna is important. So what do I do to be able to connect with Krishna? And you start bhakti yoga, spiritual practice. So just when you think about things in the material world, you still need to connect with a method. And that's why we say, why? See, like, I can tell you one interesting thing. Most people think organized religion is bullshit. I also think that. But in every organized religion, time to time, you'll see some holy man. And that holy man, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or Hinduism, and that holy man, that's really the person I'm interested in. I'm not interested in a bunch of people dressed as, you know, black heads or white heads or Indian dress. I'm interested in one who really achieved perfection. That's what I'm interested in. To ask him what he thinks, what is his method? Just like Steve Jobs. If you ask Steve Jobs, he'll tell you. Anyway, any other question? I think our time is a little bit off here, but I'll be happy to answer one more question and let you guys process what you heard. Okay.
So just a little question, like you said that you agree with the idea that you become what you think, right? Like if you think about, like in some way, like if you think about sex all day, so you become horny or something like that. So I just wanted to ask you about the process, like what makes you interested in that? Like if I'm thinking about, I don't know, like some person and about his quality and about his appearance. So I think that after a long time, I'll in some conscious way you will become in some way like him. Like I will start to behave like him and think in the same way that he thinks. And like, do we have any subconscious level that just know how to, I don't know, like see this thing and just not copy them, and we're not even aware of it? Like, you know what I mean?
Okay, I got you. Do you know Kabbalah?
No.
Kabbalah?
Yeah.
Okay. So Kabbalah is ancient mystic science, practically magic, which helps you to achieve certain things. But it's not the only one, because see, in European culture, the Jews were anti-Christians, so they had to hide their knowledge and practice in their own society. But if you really look at the Masons and all the secret societies of Europe, especially, because they were start at the time when the Christianity were dominate as a political power, and people like Giordano Bruno had to be burned. So therefore, common intellectual people would have to become part of secret society, because there were more spiritual knowledge into that secret society than just common knowledge that you'll get in a church. So the basic idea of that spiritual knowledge is that you have to learn how to deal with your own consciousness and world around you. So let me just explain to you. In the mystic yoga, which I'm partially practicing in my personal mystic yoga that I do, which is not bhakti yoga, but it's part of bhakti yoga, you have to certainly understand how the energy and prana and physical elements are moving in this world, like fire, ether. There's special certain yogic practice to understand how the reality work. But that is just a very side technique to really help you to control your external consciousness and to come to level of your soul. Once you come into level of your soul, which is yourself, because you have to understand, you're not the body, you're not born 20 years ago, you're eternally existing soul. So once you come to level of the soul, then one realization you have, the soul is driven by love. Everybody is driven by love. So as a soul, you're also driven by love, and it will be naturally dragging you towards loving a lover, an object of your love, which means God. So think of this. So when you will get your pure consciousness, only one thing you're going to be really interested in is about love and loving exchange. Just like I've said, in the gross world, the philosophers like Jung and Freud were talking about, oh, people here in this world driven by sex. That's true, but that's not exactly the principle of the truth, because sexual nature, it's the low nature of physical condition. You're conditioned by male body, female body, you attract to male because you're female at certain. So that is your physical nature. But really, you're a spiritual soul and you are attracted by divine souls. You understand what I'm trying to say? So your consciousness will be fully driven towards love and divinity once you become pure conscious. That is the yogic method. So on a physical level, you can use this. That's why I said to Kabbalah, you can also use phenomenal of consciousness, just like, you know, this world exists from physical elements. This world has a particular karma levels. You can understand how to see future and past. It's not that difficult, actually. You know, I've learned this very quick, certain yogic techniques, but I thought, I don't really, like, for instance, I've learned technique when you need to understand when you die, how long you have to live and how you die. Like my question to you, do you really want to know when you're going to die? Like, do you want to know when you die?
In some way, yeah, but I think it will just make me depressed and just, I don't know.
So that's also made me depressed, not only you. So I said, why is the hell I want to learn yogic technique to know when I die, when I'm eternal soul? So let me basically concentrate on spiritual thing than all this magical mystic powers. So this mystic powers really will not make me happy. They'll just make me more frustrated. Like, I know when I'm going to die. Oh my God, I'm going to like think every day, okay, I'm going to die, blah, blah, blah. So screw it. But if I know I am eternal soul, I have my eternal spiritual position with God, that makes much more sense to me. What about you?
I just think that if some divine or something like that will come to me and say, Noga, my name is Noga, by the way, you will die like 20 years from now, and I'm optimistic. So I just have the
certainty
that I have 20 years to do whatever I want, and I won't die in these 20 years. I think a big part of our fear and what drives us to not doing some stuff is like fear that his deep level is like fear from dying. And if I know for sure that I will die in 20 years, I can do whatever I want. I can go around the world and take risk and do whatever I want because I know that I'm gonna die in just like 20 years, and I can do whatever I want and make whatever I want in these 20 years.
So you're exactly like me. You're also a life waster. So I say, okay, I know I have 20 years to live. Let me go waste my life. So
what do you mean by waste your life? Like, do you have something that...
Go to Thailand, to beach, have a good time, go to rave party, see my family and friends, see this, that, which a lot of people consider to be a meaning of their life. Go travel, go do this. But if you really examine spiritual and conscious transformation, and why do we need to go to journey and travel? To meet somebody great. So it's not really that you went to rave party and you took drugs and you danced like crazy. That's what not make you better person or different person. What make you better person, you went somewhere and you met somebody great and you inspired by that person to be greater than you are. So when you say, I have a 20 years old or 2 million years old, it's all similar. It's just not question of how much of that time you waste in your life. Because if you really want to know time zone, I can give you very interesting statistics, which you can learn. Let's say if you live 100 years, out of it, you sleep about 30%, which means out of your 100 years, you sleep about 33 years old, which means you're almost useless, you're knocked out. So just think of this, one third of your life you used, you're out. Then you have to go to bathroom, you have to clean yourself, you have to make a breakfast, you have to eat, you have to shit, you have to go to work, you have to travel to your work, you have to do your useless work 8 hours a day, but actually you never can do 8 hours, most productive time of 4 hours, but still 8 hours you have to work. And you do this until you become sexually potent, then you start looking for mate, you're trying to think about family, then you get the family, then you start raising children. So basically what it tells you, most of your time is just being wasted in your life anyway, between eating, sleeping, shitting, working, doing something else. So what is your real life? It's not life, it's existence. You have to understand there's a life and there's existence. So let me tell you what the life is. When you, let's say, some spiritual awakening come to your life, or you first time felt love, or you look at some piece of art and you said, oh my God, it's spiritual. You know, so the deep impressions called samskara, that's what really move you towards your life. Not how many days you live, not how many days you sleep, not how many times you eat a day. That is all physical existence. That's not change your life. That's not make you impression.
But like, I think that all the stuff that you said, like sleeping and cleaning ourselves, and you know, all the big part from our living that we're kind of useless, like what you define, like yeah, like the example, like if we work like 8 days a week, day, and only 4 of them are productive. So I think that if you like choosing what's good by dividing good by not useless, so you will be very, very depressed because it's really out of reality, right? Because if you're gonna die at the end of the day, so like everything you've done in the work or people you met, I think it will be forgotten by the end of the day. So I don't know, maybe the real meaning is like just have a good point of view about the world and about yourself, and having a good time and meeting great people, and feel love and be loved and giving what you can.
Look, you're an amazing, optimistic girl, which every one of us had this inspiration. And I can tell you, keep your inspiration until you die. But when you become a yogi, you're not technically wasting your life. You know definition between your life. You know you have to go to bathroom and better time so your body more healthier. You know you have to eat, so you eat spiritual food. You know you have to have relationship with people, but this relation people have to be very valuable. Like I'm talking to you right now, I'm not feeling I'm wasting my time, and I don't feel I'm wasting your time. We're talking about truth. It's not just bullshit, blah 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 blah, and go away. We're talking about very serious things in our life. So I highly appreciate what you're saying. So that means if you become a spiritual person, if you become yogi, you're not wasting your life, you're moving towards perfection. Every day of your life become a perfection. Every day, every relationship, everybody you meet, it's a perfection path. Let's say as a young, beautiful woman, you want to have a relationship, but I want to ask a question. Do you want to have deep relationship with some spiritual person, or you want to have some superficial relationship based on enjoyment? Like, hey, let's go together, take drugs. That's not the relationship you're looking for. You're looking for some true object of love, some true friend, not friend just because from Facebook, or not friend because you have money or you can enjoy together for some short while. So we're all looking for something real and substantial. So that's about, you said absolutely correct. It's about learn how to get true purpose of life, and then you become a happy person. So it's not like I'm trying to tell you, don't eat, don't sleep. Although some yogis don't need to do eat and sleep, but you know, they're high level yogis, and even they're not maybe exist amongst us today. There might be in Himalayas and caves, you know, maybe they're on Everest, but again, the story of the person from Everest, he was a person that saved another soul. He wasn't the guy, he wasn't like a mystical yogi, he was just a common man. So as a common person, you can do great things to yourself and to others. Anyway, I'm appreciating all of you guys. It seems like you have an interest. I'm sorry, you know, I know if I would be physically close to you, I would, you know, kick your ass and wake you up in conversation more. I know you're very intellectual, you're observing, you're listening, you have the observer nature. So it's also good because like when I'm talking to somebody, when I'm hearing somebody talking, like I'm thinking, okay, is this guy is interesting, or he's a bullshit, or he's some kind of a person I can relate with. So I appreciate you. I think you guys great. And I think you got together here, you know, in a beautiful place, beautiful house. It's wonderful. But I'm here, believe me, my interest is to support my friends with their spiritual search. And I'm so happy that they're extending this to others because I believe in Israel as a great nation. I've said many times, there's so many vegetarians now in Israel. Then so many people are anti-violence. There's so many people anti-political because, you know, the reputation of Israel been screwed by, you know, the bankers or high corrupt politicians. But I know they're not people of Israel. The people of Israel are looking for something beautiful. Most people, and many times I've said to Russian people, I said, try to learn what kibbutz is. Because, you know, like, if you want to really learn community life, go to Israel, learn how people live there. And that's a great way, that's almost like yogic way of ashram, where people moving together for spiritual perfection. So that's great. But anyway, I mean, we live in a very special world. And when I used to live in America, I had many, many Israel friends. They all would come to New York to make some money. But you know what they would do after they make money? They all would come to India and Thailand. And my question is to you, why does Israelis making money in New York, but spending their time in India? Do you know why? Well, somebody can say, oh, because there you can smoke ganja, but you know, you can smoke ganja everywhere. I think it's a natural feeling for Israeli people to go to India because according to genetic science, I have good news for you. You have about 15 to 25% of Aryan blood. You understand that? So you are in your blood as a blood of yogis and sages. And if you study the history of Israeli tribes, they were traveling. So some of the great sages and spiritual yogis mix with an Israeli blood. And that's what, it's not like, you know, some Jewish-oriented institute of propaganda. It's the Russian scientist of genetics after studying DNA, because when they told him, hey, what about the Aryan blood? He said, well, you know, like for instance, Jews, they have over 20%. So that means in your spiritual search, you have in your DNA search for God, for truth, for reality. And there are many, many spiritual ideas in Judaism as well. So we're not denying that. We're just saying that in yoga, it's all about self-experience. So guys, anyway, I think I've said enough for today, and I'd be happy to talk more next time. I'm really want to appreciate Jamuna and her family, her husband, the team of being hosts today, because they're very generous people. They're the true communists. But when I say communism, you know what communism is? So I tell you one funny story. So Brezhnev, Russian communist leader, showed his mother a collection of Rolls Royces. And she said, oh, my son, what's happening if communists will take over? So that means like he was really disguising as a communist, but really he collects Rolls Royces. But the true person who wants to share food, consciousness, knowledge, and that's what it is. It's all about sharing. So Jamuna and her family, they want to share. So thank you very much, guys. I hope I share enough with you. I'm sorry if I told you too much or maybe too little, but I'm happy to see you and stay in touch. Thank you so much. I'm leaving right now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. By the way, I'm in Thailand. It's one of my favorite countries. We have a little ashram there, and I'll be happy to see you guys in Thailand. I hope after COVID finish. I hope you guys will travel again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.
Кто там, Лида?